This is the foundation of Feng Shui. This is Feng Shui stripped of all of the, like the newer stuff, stripped of formulas, stripped
Yeah.
of cultural things. It
Mm-hmm.
is
Mm-hmm.
basic need of Feng Shui.
Welcome to Winning with Feng Shui. Join me, Candace, a certified Feng Shui practitioner, for a chat with Feng Shui experts from every walk of life. They'll share their inspirational stories of helping themselves and their clients achieve winning results and success using Feng Shui. Hey guys, today I have on Maureen Calamia. So Maureen is a thought leader and a sought after speaker on transforming spaces in client lives through the inspiration of nature, biophilic design, and feng shui. She's the author of Creating Luminous Spaces and offers consulting, coaching, and training for businesses and residential clients. Maureen empowers others to discover and nourish their true nature in their inner and outer spaces. Welcome, Maureen. I'm so glad to have you on today.
Hi, Candace. Thank you for having me on.
So, one thing I noticed in your introduction, you talk about inner and outer spaces, and I feel like, every practitioner, of course, like I do the Chinese astrology, I do the Bazi. What do you do? I guess what do you when you're looking at someone's inner feng shui, the inner space? What do you focus on?
I well, first of all, obviously you were talking about, right. We're talking about the
Hmm.
inner spaces
Yes.
within us.
Hmm.
So I like to see where people are in their lives, where their joy is, or maybe there's a lack of joy. Kind of see where they are currently, because I think a lot of people, you would agree, I'm sure, come to us when they're in um, a challenge, a major shift in their life. That tends to be a very common occurrence. Um, so I kind of like to see where they are, but then I like to have them take my true nature quiz, which is based on the 5 elements of Eastern philosophy. So that is wood, fire, earth, metal, and water. So it gives me a little bit more information about who they are really deep down. It may not be expressed in their environment or in their lives. So, kind of those two things together, I kind of see what we might do to bring their nurturing elements into their space, and then just even helping them identify with who they are at a real basic level. And something else that I often do, of course, I only ask it when it comes up in my own head,
Hmm.
but I ask about their dreams,
Hmm.
and are there any significant dreams they've had lately? And sometimes there's like a gem in there that we
Hmm.
can work with and see what it is they really want to do.
A
Yeah.
lot with the subconscious, it seems. Yeah,
Yeah.
like those hidden elements, you say. Yeah. So, how did you get into doing feng shui? How did you discover feng shui? And I do, of course, want to talk about biophilic design and bringing all this nature, those natural things in, the natural touches.
Yeah, so my path was pretty it's interesting that in that it was like abrupt and direct, but uh, all of my life, I think many of us all had kind of an intuitive feeling about feng shui, even though we didn't know what we weren't even aware of the discipline of feng shui.
Yeah.
And I studied astrology from when I was like 12 years old, Western astrology. That was my thing, and I practiced yoga most of my life, and then I had kind of like a midlife crisis, and it was precipitated by my mother's death.
Hmm.
And then it seemed like everything in my life was falling apart within a few years.
Hmm.
There was all these shifts going on. So I really started kind of my spiritual path in earnest, say in my late 30s. But I was working in corporate marketing, and I loved it for 20 years, absolutely loved it. But then I got to a point where I just couldn't do it anymore. I just
Hmm.
hated it. I mean, I went from loving it and was so passionate to like feeling like I was on a, every day was a drudgery at work. And I was yearning for something more meaningful to do with my career. And I had no idea, but I knew it was going to be much more spiritual. So it just kind of one of those interesting synchronicities. My sister asked me to go to this arboretum that's on Long Island where I live for a special event they were having. And I went, oh, yeah, I've seen an ad. They have a Feng Shui school. Like I saw this ad for like a year, but it didn't really connect until then. I looked into it, and within a few weeks, I was sitting in class, signed up, never experienced Feng Shui before, just knew that it was something that it was the next step on my journey. So it, yeah, it was pretty wild. I don't know. I just plopped down the money for a certification program and I was in it. And once I was sitting in class, I couldn't believe it was actually a class about the five elements. And because I studied Western astrology all these years, I was really familiar with working with the elements, although a little different. But personality types and how those resonate in nature, and I was just in love from day one. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. So I feel like my journey was a little bit abrupt like that too. Discovered Feng Shui, got certified. Here I am. I was like, I'm in. So yeah. Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, but it was
Yeah.
precipitated by a few years of searching
Yes. Yeah.
and not knowing. And once I discovered it, it was like there's nothing going to stop me from doing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So determined.
Yeah. And so you mentioned that your mother passed away. So that is another thing that I've noticed with that search. I think what I've noticed is that like mine, I think I had a little bit of a spiritual crisis because my grandmother passed away. She got cancer, and in a few months she was gone. I mean, we knew, and she didn't get treatment. She was ready to go. Um, and so, but just in when you, I don't know if your mom happened to be sick, but I notice when you are around somebody that is getting ready to pass, or that they're going to pass, there's it's almost like a different kind of spiritual awakening that death brings you really close to, and it brings a lot of questions, and
Mhm.
for sure, I think that's what kicked off also uh, my questioning of everything, and yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So, I mentioned that I started studying astrology when I was
Hmm.
12.
Yeah.
My father passed away right before I turned 11.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it was that experience that started me on a spiritual quest.
Mm-hmm.
And even though I started it then and I was doing some things, I kind of got caught up with life and then kind of put that on the back burner and
Mm-hmm.
into college, was into my career, got married, had children, and all that.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until my mother passing that I went, oh my gosh, there's such richness here.
Mm-hmm.
I was obviously able to deal with her death much better than my father.
Mm-hmm.
And because, well, I had experienced it already, but also, of course, I was much older. But still, it really brought me into that space that I am forever grateful for both of them. I wouldn't be the person I'm here today
Mm-hmm.
without. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. It really does. It almost does something to you, that I guess because you start thinking about, what is next or where, and then my grandmother had some very strange experiences, just things she would see and things she would say. And it really did. It made me question a lot of things. And, so that's kind of off the subject a little bit, I guess, of feng shui. But, I guess here we are talking about it. But,
Well,
well,
it's all
yeah.
life.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
all connected. It
Mhm.
definitely is.
Yeah. And I think much like you too, I've found feng shui because you're trying to solve, you think what is next or not, as far as like the afterlife, like we just talked about, but just in life, you kind of come to a point, like you said, a lot of people, when they are come to looking at an alternative way to fix their environment or, some things like that, they come to it because they're trying to fix something within their life or within their self or whatever. And so, yeah, definitely, I see that how feng shui can help people, by setting up that environment and everything. And I like being able to give people clarity and being able to set their environment where, it feels supportive to them. And so, a lot of that you do, you focus a lot on biophilic design. Tell us a little bit about that, because I've heard about it and I'm a little bit familiar with it, but I'd love you to talk more about it.
Well, I'm really glad that you have, because a few years ago, hardly anyone heard of it,
Mm-hmm.
but it really is growing tremendously in the last few years. But it's still very fringe. So I uncovered it while Googling nature and different aspects that I was really drawn to. That aspect of feng shui, that everything is based in our harmony with the natural world.
Mm-hmm.
And I discovered this presentation and I went, oh my gosh, this is the foundation of feng shui. This is feng shui stripped of all of the, like the newer stuff, stripped of formulas, stripped
Yeah.
of cultural things. It
Mm-hmm.
is basic need of feng shui. So I started studying and I purchased, I think, well, at the time, every book available. I even got to, I even reached out to the author of that presentation who wrote almost all the books at the time, Professor Stephen Keller at Yale University. I reached out to him and asked to meet, and he met with me. And it was wonderful because he really supported me in looking at the links between feng shui and biophilic design. So just to explain, biophilic design is the understanding that we have an inherent love of living things, the human species, which is the word biophilia.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the root. And biophilic design is creating spaces that connect us to the natural world. So mostly bringing nature into our spaces, but also having that alive connection with nature. So it has definitely been part of my journey, part of my work. I even developed a course that I've been teaching for the last 2 years and love it. But yeah, it really is wonderful in that it's gotten a lot more press in the last couple of years. And of course, people always say the easiest way to do biophilic design is bring plants in, live plants to our spaces. And yes, but it is so much more than just that.
Yeah. So can you explain a little bit how you, I guess, add those touches of nature to a home and how you kind of incorporate it into feng shui?
Yeah, well, I think, like I said, it is very much the foundation of feng shui. It's the land itself, it
Mm-hmm.
is the actual elements. So when we work with those 5 elements of wood, fire, earth, metal, and water, when we bring them in from a feng shui perspective, we are creating spaces that are more biophilic. But of course, in feng shui, we go a little bit more symbolic. Sometimes it's colors or shapes of element. With biophilic design, it's more the material itself. So bringing actual wood furnishings in, or bamboo fabrics, or candles for the fire, or the actual material itself, or images of that. So artwork and things like that. But I think a big aspect of it is making sure that people are connected to natural light, use of nature wherever possible, especially where they work. and spend a lot of their time during the day. So, you know, amongst other things, those are really, really key for me. Bringing in plants wherever we can, wherever it makes sense. Not just focusing on the wealth corner or, you know, that particular area of the Bagua or direction. So, yeah, it's, I've actually, because there's been a set of guidelines basically that have been morphed over, say, the last 15 years. There's a lot of different guidelines of how to use biophilic design. So I created my own based on the 5 element system.
Mm.
But I've kind of meshed a few, like I've taken from some guidelines and some from others and created this wonderful system that works for both Feng Shui practitioners as well as architects, interior designers, landscaper,
Hmm.
architects, that type of thing. So
Yeah. I know sometimes when we start doing feng shui or we get into it, a lot of people do get, confused, like you said, designers and architects and stuff like that. I think it feels so overwhelming. And so I think it's really awesome that you're able to, break it down where it's easy enough for somebody to come in and use without having to, like I said, we can get into like all the classical formulas and all that stuff. And you said you also had classically trained. Yeah.
yes,
And
yes,
so
I
I,
am actually both.
mhm.
So the modern Western approach
Mhm.
and as well as classical. Yeah,
Yes. And I think and again with classical you can get into very complex things, but I think the main thing people need to understand is starting off with the right environment and starting off with a good piece of land or good surroundings because that's a large, large portion of your feng shui.
absolutely, absolutely. It's I always tell my students it's the big picture.
Mm-hmm.
Don't get caught going into details right away. Step back, take a breath, look at
Mm-hmm.
the environment, look at the neighborhood, look at the land. It'll give you a lot of clues
Mm-hmm.
on how you might be able to help people in the most, I think, the most significant way. When we start getting way down into little things, sometimes doing a few things on a larger scale can
Yeah.
be everything.
Yeah.
What's so cool is, you can bring small symbols of a
Mm-hmm.
mountain and place them on your land, in an intentional way to kind of capture in that mountain energy,
Mm-hmm.
or, you know, a, a little water feature that,
Mm-hmm.
even like a dry riverbed type of
Mm-hmm.
with rocks to kind of mimic the water
Mm-hmm.
element. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. For me, I love having plants around, and I know some of my windows that are here from my backyard. And this past year, I think I paid more attention to my garden than anything. But and in my front yard too, I have a big window. And so I love to make sure that I can see, my backyard and all my flowers and everything. And so I try to make sure like I rearrange my furniture in the spring to look out that big window in the front to see all my trees and all the green and everything because it really makes it feel like it's part of your space. Of course, I love my plants inside.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it has a big impact on how
Mhm.
we feel.
Yeah.
So, when we're dealing with a lot of stress and uncertainty in our lives, it's more important than ever. And do you know that plant live plant indoor plant sales have skyrocketed this past year
Hmm.
because realizing that if I can't get out, I need to bring nature in. So, and plants do so much for us on a mental level, even.
Yeah. So the first time I ever heard about biophilic design is when I talked to she was an interior designer, and she did what was called designing for wellness, in which she kind of set the place up, just supporting to support an individual, like if they wanted to focus on exercise, she would, incorporate that. But she incorporated some biophilic design in her in her interior design. And one of the things when I was doing some research to talk to her, I was noticing that I think it's like an estimated 90% of our lives are spent indoors. And I just think that's crazy. I was just like, oh my gosh, like so how can we incorporate some of that aside from bringing the live plants? What's the biggest suggestion you think you would give somebody who wanted to kind of open their space up or get more of an outdoor feel, you know?
Yeah, well, if we're inside, like I said before, natural light is absolutely critical. And views if you can. Obviously, if you are in more urban environment, you may not have access to it. But then of course you could bring in photographs or artwork with beautiful nature views, because that will help. Abstract art, although I love abstract art, and this is even abstract behind me, but it's got a very flowy, organic feel to it. But abstract art in general is not good for calming energy.
Mm-hmm.
So even in like hospitals, they say, when you have kind of angular abstract art, it can be very distressing. It
Mm-hmm.
creates more stress. But anyhow, when I work with clients, I want to make sure that if they work from home, and geez, a lot of people have,
Yeah.
I want to position them in a part of their house that they have great natural light and views of nature if possible. And I even suggest to them, move during the course of your day if you
Mm-hmm.
need to. But it is that important. But then even things like suggesting that they go for walks in nature, take breaks during their day. I had a client who worked like a half a block from Central Park
Mm.
and never took a break. She never went through the park.
Oh no.
And oh my gosh,
Yeah.
I said, okay, this is one of your feng shui remedies. I said, once a week,
Mm-hmm.
take a break for lunch and go into the park. I figured she should do it every day, but I wasn't going to tell her every day because, people are like, oh my gosh, I can't go from 0 to 60.
Yeah.
And she did. And she said, you know what? I even do it more than once a week. So I
Mm.
was like, that's great. Um, so getting out there into nature is another really huge thing. So it's obviously working in feng shui, at least the way I work, it's not all physical things that somebody needs to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's more of a mindset, or you know things to behavior to
Mm-hmm.
shift as well. I think that's
Yeah.
really.
Yeah, that makes a really good point. I know I work from home, and like I said, I have spent more time in my garden, I think, than any other year, just because I really wanted my yard to be green and like lush, and I wanted flowers this year. And I don't know, it was almost a thing where I felt like my house looked depressing and my yard looked depressing. And so this year I really wanted to focus on, flowers, and just I planted some wildflower seeds and did some landscaping that was because we have very dry like soil, and so I put
Right.
some drought resistant plants in. But yeah, during it makes me go outside because during the day I'm like, okay, I need to, let me pull a few weeds, or let me go look at the butterflies, and watch the bees around the flowers,
Yeah,
and it
see
really
what's
does fresh
blooming.
air. Yeah, yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And I mean, by placing those drought resistant plants, I mean you're planting native plants.
Yeah, yeah.
It's actually instilling a sense of place
Hmm.
where you are
Yeah.
in so it honors the
Hmm.
land that you're on.
Oh, yeah. I thank you. I didn't think about that, but it does. I love the like some of those ones that are very drought resistant, but they flourish in like bad soil. I'm like, and they attract the most butterflies and bees. So I'm like, I'd love to sit and watch. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then you also that wildlife is really really important to good feng shui. So
Hmm.
when we're observing the land, part of it is there an abundance of and variety of wildlife?
Hmm.
Thriving here, because if nothing is thriving there, including plants and wildlife, then you may not thrive there.
Yeah.
There's detrimental energy in the land. Yeah.
Yeah, I know with landform, it's very much about looking at when you're looking at mountains, and is the mountain green, and how is the soil, and so even that part of feng shui is definitely
Yes.
assessed, and it's a part that people don't really talk about a whole lot, because it's, people when they look at it, they want to look at their home or their bed, or the colors they use and stuff like that, but it really is a thing of, even like I said, even soil quality. It's pretty crazy. Yeah, that you can
Yeah, I mean,
things.
unfortunately, most people do hire us to look at the home they own right now or
Yeah.
they rent right now, but it is so fulfilling to work with someone to find the right land,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Because then you can, evaluate different neighborhoods or landscapes and say, okay, this one is more supportive for you, this one not so much,
Yeah.
and really help them, like you said. Feng shui is like 90% of it is the
Hmm.
land.
Yes. Yeah.
So
Very
most of the
large
time,
portion.
we're only working with that 10% to try
Yeah.
to better, right?
Yeah. So one thing I did want to kind of talk about, so we all have those memorable stories talking about clients and everything that we're like, man, that really, I feel like I really impacted that person's life, or we applied feng shui to our home, or, and so I would love for you to tell us of a time that you feel like feng shui was really impactful.
Yeah, I I made a couple of
Lots of
notes,
stories.
and then of course they're in another room. But
Oh, no.
um, so just one quick one. It was a client more than 10 years ago, probably 12 years ago, and she was looking for help with wealth, bringing finances in, and a romantic relationship. So one of the things, that I suggested to her was to kind of clear out some of the clutter. She had a lot of paper clutter and some piles in certain areas of her apartment. I said, okay, you got to do that, and create a love shrine in your bedroom, So I told her where she could put it and gave her a few ideas. I said, something simple or more elaborate, whatever you'd like. So 2 days later, she calls me up and she says, I was going through the pile of clutter, and there was a check for $2,000 from the insurance company I didn't even know I got like months ago.
Mm.
So she got her money like immediately. And about a week later, she calls me up and said, a guy at the gym that I've been looking at and flirting with finally asked me out. So just a quick, they wound up getting married. I have
Oh.
been there. I've been doing feng shui for them every year. They of course moved in together, and he has a business, so I do the feng shui for the business
Yeah.
and for them every year. And yeah, I think we had our 12th anniversary together this past year.
Oh.
So yeah, so there's a real success story. Another one I brief is, I had a client who had twin sons who were in high school. One of the sons was starting to get into like a lot of trouble and acting out, and so that was the reason why I came, to kind of help with harmony and to see what I could do. So one of the I gave her two suggestions for that. One was I intuitively felt that he was feeling insecure, and he needed to kind of boost up his masculine energy, believe it or not. Even though he was acting out, it comes from a place of insecurity, right?
Mhm.
So I suggested to her to suggest to him, saying the feng shui consultant thought maybe you'd like a dragon statue. And I mean, we're talking about a 16-year-old. We're not talking about a 12-year-old. But I was like, see if he's open to that. Well, not only that, they went into the city together for the day to buy his dragon statue. So here they got to spend the whole day together. And he found one that he really liked and put it in his room. And the other thing was, his door was not flush on a 90-degree angle like most of our doors, right? It
Mhm.
was on a slanted
Yeah.
angle. It was on an angle. He was the only bedroom with his door on this
Mm.
angle.
Mhm.
And I said, and his twin was across the way from him. So their doors were like kind of facing each other.
Mhm.
So I suggested that she put one of these crystals in the hallway in between to help soften the energy of his angle door. And, you know, like a few weeks later, I talked to her and she's like, the fighting stopped.
Mhm.
And what's just funny is about a year later, she contacted me and said she heard her sons fighting upstairs, and she went upstairs and she looked up and she noticed the crystal was gone.
Oh.
And she said, where did that go? And one of the sons said, oh, I took it down. And she's like, put it back.
No. No.
So, you know, it's just, I mean, it's just, you know, two little stories that come to mind when I think of pretty quickly how things shifted
Yeah,
in
I love
clients' lives.
yeah. I love the quick stories, where you're like they had a very quick turnaround, especially with finances. I know I was interviewing a lady earlier, another practitioner, and she had, I think everyone kind of has a story where it's like that. We're like, I told them to do, XYZ, and they found a check or they got a check that day or whatever. And I love those stories.
The two biggest reasons why people call us is because of they need more money
Mhm.
and relationship.
Yes, yeah. That's another one that I love, when you help somebody in their relationship. That's why I started doing feng shui. I wanted to enhance my relationship. I wanted to try and calm some things down around my house. So, yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you have room for another quick story,
I do,
but
yes. I think
okay. Well,
yes.
when I was sitting in class that first weekend, when I signed up for the certification program, I learned about, and I was learning the more westernized method. So it was where the Bagua map,
Mhm.
we called the three-door entry method. I
Yes.
realized that my home office was in the career area.
Mhm.
That's great, except it was on the second floor, which isn't the best, but it's okay. The second floor, and it was piled with clutter.
Mhm.
All of like my previous jobs, I like took binders and boxes and file cabinets, and but I had literally stacks. And then my husband was doing an eBay business, and he just like piled
Mhm.
stuff to another area of the office. So I came home that day and I went, because I was a freelancer at that point in marketing, and I had just finished a big assignment and I had nothing on the horizon. And I went to my husband, well, tomorrow I'm
Mhm.
clear at least my stuff out of the office. I'm going to organize and get rid of stuff. So within an hour, my husband was up there and helping me organize and organizing his stuff. 2 days later, I got a phone call from a colleague. She needed a freelancer up in Connecticut a few days a week. And she didn't know how long it would be. It was just like an in between while they were hiring. It wound up being almost a 2-year assignment.
Very nice.
So
Yeah.
it just, I experienced, even though I had no personal experience about feng shui before I took the certification program, I got immediate confirmation when I started that first week. So
Yeah, yeah, it's really is amazing sometimes just to see, and that's why one of the reasons I want to do these interviews, to talk about the impact that feng shui can make in people's lives. And sometimes it's very quick, and not only that, just having the realizations, whether it's, like I said, a Western, the Bagua, or just looking at some different things in your home, but to understand our environment does affect us, and to see that connection is really amazing, I think. you know
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
So tell us, so you have a school. Can you talk a little bit about, like, what exactly, so if somebody wanted to come and study with you, what would the program look like?
Sure. So it's called the Luminous Spaces Feng Shui School. And I started teaching that school in 2015, but I started teaching a certification program at an interior design school here on Long Island back in 2009. So basically, I've been teaching for 12 years, a certification. My school, though, has, it is a Western focus. So it's the style that does not use the compass directions. Although I've been trained in both, I have an affinity, and that's the way people gravitate, you know.
Yeah.
Um, so, so I teach that method, as well as layering in a lot of the nature connection aspects. A little bit, I was talking about that
Mhm.
before, and has a deep dive into the five elements. I think they are priceless. I think they are amazing. And actually, my book is written about those five elements, creating luminous spaces.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, it's a self-study, but it's a mix. It's not your typical like online course that you just take and there's no interaction. There's a lot of support and a lot of one-on-one with every student, from doing a full consultation on their home as part of the course to Q&A sessions on Zoom twice a month, to a private Facebook group, and then access to me. So I'm very proud of my course. It's really growing, and all of my graduates are still part of the course. So even when you get certified, you're still welcomed in. Like actually, right before this call, I was doing a monthly. So I do that for everybody in my program and even graduates. And it's business building stuff or like more information on Feng Shui techniques. Um, and yeah, so I have, so my school is kind of now an umbrella. It went from being a Feng Shui school, part of the name, but I also have my Biophilic Design school under that. It's also a self-study with lots of interaction. And I also, something that we didn't talk about, but I also teach about earth energy healing,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
the techniques of dowsing and intuition, connecting to the spirit of the land, the guardian of the land. So kind of comes all full circle. And I feel like the umbrella is really about our nature connection, which is absolutely key to, it is my passion, and it is something that we absolutely must, each of us, do more connection to the natural world, because as one of my teachers said, the earth is shutting down, and that is frightening. Its spirit is shutting down, and we really need to act on our own connection. You know,
Mhm.
I think people are concerned about the environment, but they feel completely overwhelmed. Like, what do I do? Um, we have to start in our own backyard,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
So just like you did, you connected with your land. You intuited what needed to be planted there. You're nurturing the land, so it's no longer going to be this dry, hot patch of land. It has vitality. It's supporting the wildlife. Um, if everyone can do that and start learning about their own backyard, that's where we have to begin. It's funny, everything has a yin and the yang, right?
Yes.
So when we get into dowsing, it's like feng shui is almost the yang or the yang, and the dowsing part is, or the intuitive part, that's like the
Mhm.
yin. It's
Mhm.
connecting our our intuition of what the land needs.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
very interesting. So since you say that, that is one thing, just I guess even just kind of talking about the elements, a while back somebody was talking about the element of wood represents like growth and learning. And I have pointed out that I think the person needed some water or something. And they were like, well, I thought wood was, learning. And I kind of pointed out the fact that water represents like that wisdom and intuitiveness, and so there's a difference between knowing something and then having that intuition. And that comes in a lot in feng shui, where we, can come into a space and we can know all the things, but you
Mhm.
still use that intuition to say, oh, maybe this person needs, something on this wall, or we can incorporate these certain elements. So, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah,
Intuition.
absolutely. And a lot about the elements, they kind of overlap. It's not defined,
Mm-hmm.
perfectly defined. And
Mm-hmm.
I actually figured that out when I was writing my book, because I was like, well, is it that or is it that? I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, it's gray, but it's more this.
Yeah.
That is the thing about Feng Shui. It's not clearly defined. It's very blurry lines between
Mm-hmm.
things.
Yeah.
It's the resonance, it's the balance between things all the time.
I heard like
Yeah.
a Chinese medicine practitioner who was talking about that, because he was kind of talking about the elements, which are of course incorporated into all parts of the five arts of Chinese metaphysics. And he was
Yes.
that's one of the things he said, is that each element can represent 1,000 things. So yeah, for sure. There's a lot of
Yeah.
It's a lot to learn. A lot to learn. It's
Yes.
fascinating.
Yes.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, it was so nice to talk to you. So what I will do is, if anyone wants to get a hold of you, I'll put all your social medias. I encourage everyone to follow you, go check out your school and website and everything. And I'll put all the links in the notes of the show. So nice to
All
talk to
right.
you.
Yes, it was fun to chat.
Awesome. Thank you
Thank
so much for coming on. Be sure to support the guest by checking out the link in the show notes below for more information. To support the channel, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the little notification button so you can be alerted when new episodes come out.